Hello, everybody. All right, welcome to the Mikestand. Today is, of course, Monday, January the 19th, 2026. Of course, today is the observance of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday across the country, across the United States. Of course, friendly reminder to everybody, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So let me get a couple of things out of the way here first. First off, I'm sorry I'm a little late tonight. Just got caught up with some other things earlier, so I ended up having to push the show back an hour. Um, Instead of starting at 5 like I normally would, we started at 6. Also, if you guys happen to read my post um, on my channel earlier, I've had to cancel tomorrow's show because, as I mentioned last night, we've been having some connection issues. We've been having some issues here, where, at my house with the connection. So we're going to actually have a tech come out to hopefully fix all that. Um, let's see, they're going to be here though between 1 and 5. So that's usually the time, and all, that's usually the time when I'm like prepping for the show. And of course, the show starts at 5. So rather than trying to push it back and all that and trying to really hurry to prepare, even though I would have pushed it back to 6 or 7, they're still, going through all the prep work. So I decided to cancel tomorrow's show. We will be back on Wednesday, and hopefully by then everything will be fine. We won't have to worry anymore about these little hitches and all that. You know, knock on wood, as they say, right? So with all that out of the way, here's we're coming up on the 3 minute mark. Let's see. So I guess I'll talk about what's on tap for tonight. So I got one article I'm going to go over from Bounding into Comics, um, talking a little bit about the latest Spider-Man series, the upcoming Spider-Man Spider-Versity series, um, starring Miles Morales. Some critique from, I believe it's Spencer McCooley, doing the work there. And then, of course, we'll have the wrestling wrap up. We'll get all caught up on all the latest in pro wrestling. Of course, we'll look back to Friday Night SmackDown. Look back to Friday Night SmackDown. Um, AEW's Collision as well. Maximum Carnage Collision, and as well as TNA Genesis. And well, actually today, because it was already on earlier today, we'll actually look at the results already of Monday Night Raw. Normally, I would just preview it and tell what matches were signed. But as such as, of course, WWE right now is on their road to WrestleMania tour, their European tour. You know, we will be going ahead to, and of course, before Royal Rumble coming up at the end of the month here on the 31st, this Saturday, of course, WWE will be having a Saturday night's main event as well. So we might take a quick peek at what they've signed so far for that as well. And of course, a number of people have already signed, have already declared for the Rumble. So, and then we'll wrap things up with this day in each history. So, again, one last friendly reminder before we get started. If you guys haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started here. Let's get right into the article here. All right. Alrighty then. So, All right, so let's get into this. So, Marvel Comics' upcoming Amazing Spider-Man, in smaller quotes here, Spider-Versity, on smaller quote, series proves they still have no idea what to do with Miles Morales. So this series is obviously going to feature Miles Morales. Article by Spencer Cooley, published back on January the 16th. Well, let's go ahead and see what's going on here. Despite Marvel Comics regularly positioning the original Ultimate Spider-Man as one of their central and most important heroes, their upcoming Spider-Versity event proves that the former House of Ideas still has absolutely no idea what to do with Miles Morales. Hmm. Penned by current Amazing Spider-Man Volume 7 writer Joe Kelly in partnership with Predator Bloodshed scribe Jordan Morris and featuring Spider-Man Torn, Volume 1, Number 1's Pepe Perez on art duties, the five-issue Amazing Spider-Man Spider-Versity will center on Norman Osborn, who in recent months has taken it upon himself to stand in for the wall crawler following his sudden ejection from Earth at the hands of Hellgate, as he sets out to train the next generation of spider heroes to their full potential. So okay, so Spider Versity. Okay, I had a feeling that based on that terminology alone, I had a feeling it was going to be something like that, some kind of like Spider-Man college thing. So that sounds like a very interesting premise to say the least. A college where you can learn how to be Spider-Man. Well, first off, from what I understand, don't you have to be bitten by a radioactive spider in order to at least have the abilities? Yes, I'm sure anybody can. If you at least you have some idea of like as as Christopher Daniel Barnes, as Peter explained it in back in the '90s, having that, even if you know the correct chemical combination that it takes to create a spider web, the whole idea of swinging around on a spider web the way that Spider-Man does takes a lot of strength, and if you don't necessarily have the strength of a human-sized spider, that could be quite um, daunting, to say the least. So, anyways, quote, Miles Morales, Spider-Gwen, Silk, Aranya, Spider-Boy, and Spider-Girl have one thing in common. They aren't ready. They aren't ready, unquote, reads the series' official logline. Quote, according to former Resolute Spider-Man, Norman Osborn, Resolute Spider-Man, according to former Resolute Spider-Man Norman Osborn, so he and Spider-Woman are going to train them to meet the next threat. The only way the Green Goblin knows how, because the next threat might well be the Green Goblin, unquote. So Spider-Versity. So I guess that's the Spidey version of the X Academy, I guess. Instead of mutants, though, you've got a classroom of people with spider abilities. Hmm. All right. Anyways, speaking to IGN as to just why the young heroes would willingly put themselves under Osborn's charge, Morris asserted, quote, "The younger spiders all have their own take," unquote. Quote, "Some of them are stoked, some are more wary," uh, in parentheses here, literally the ones Norman has killed before, on parentheses. "To a certain extent, they're all students of Pete, even the ones who haven't trained with him specifically, see him as a role model. Since Pete has forgiven Norman, the other spiders are willing to give him a chance, even though certain members of the team are more prickly. They all share the try and see the best in people ethos that is so important to Pete," unquote. Quote, "There's a very cool big bad in the shadows that will put this new spider team to the test. The spiders want to be on the level of teams like the Avengers and X-Men." Kind of kind of funny they mentioned X-Men here when I kind of drew that comparison as well. You know, a spider college that is a kid that is maybe the Spider-Man version of the Professor Xavier School for the Gifted, right? But that means going up against the kind of threats those teams deal with on the reg, unquote. Mm-hmm. All right, and I do need to step away from the computer for a moment. I'll be right back. Okay. I'll be right back. I'm going to put some music on for you guys. All right. Anyways, I'm back now. Anyways, getting back to the article here. Herein lies the problem with Miles' enrollment in Osborne Kwando. Osborne Kwando, okay, that's a very interesting name. Osborne Kwando. I guess it's a spider style martial art, I guess. While such combat and field training definitely makes sense for the new to the scene Spider Boy and Spider Girl, while Gwen, Aranya, and Silk could use some advanced pointers, the Earth 1610 transplant really Earth 1610 transplant really has no business attending class. Hmm. Regardless of one's opinion on the character, the cards as they've been dealt by Marvel show that Miles is already an experienced hero in his own right. So I guess that's the transplant they were talking about. I'm a little thrown off there by their terminology there, but anyways, his record filled with numerous victories over supervillains and world-ending threats, in parentheses here, as expected for a character who first hit the scene in 2011, around the time when the Comics Code Authority was coming to it, was pretty much coming to an end, came to a full end, I guess. But also definitely helped along thanks to him being the quote unquote, the small quotes here, face of the publisher's modern efforts, (parentheses). During the course of his 1610 career, Earth 1610 career, Miles, in small quotes here, advanced milestones included being recruited and subsequently trained by the Ultimates, in particular Captain America, from Ultimate Comics Spider-Man Volume 1, number 14, in parentheses there, fighting alongside the Ultimates against the assembled forces of Hydra during the Battle of Wyoming, in parentheses here, from Ultimate Comics Spider-Man Volume 1, number 17, teaming up with a cadre of multiversal Spider-Men to defeat the Inheritors, Spider-Verse Volume 1, of course, Across the Spider-Verse, Spider Wars. Had the feeling a hell-bent on revenge Green Goblin, albeit with some help from, or felling a hell-bent on revenge Green Goblin, albeit with some help from a newly revived Peter Parker, in parentheses here, Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1, number 6, standing on the front lines against Emperor Doom's attempts to rewrite reality, in parentheses here, Secret Wars Volume 1. Any more to be said here? Oh. Since his relocation to Earth 616, following the end of Emperor Doom's reign, his further accomplishments include, I guess we're about to, single-handedly taking down the demon Blackheart, in parentheses here, Spider-Man Volume 2, number 2, serving as one of Iron Man's point men during the Second Superhuman Civil War, in parentheses here, Civil War 2, teaming with his fellow heroes to form an underground resistance to Hydra Cap's plans for global domination, parentheses, Secret Empire. Right, besting said evil doppelganger in one-on-one combat in Secret, in parentheses here, Secret Empire Volume 1, number 7, being the first hero alongside Eddie Brock to take on Krull, or Null, upon his arrival to Earth, in parentheses here, in Venom Volume 4, number 4, leading an entire faction of his fellow web-slingers in the final showdown with the Inheritors, in parentheses here, Spider Geddon, or I guess Spider Armageddon, I guess is that portmanteau. Successfully taking on Carnage during their own Peter Parker-less conflict, in parentheses, Carnage reigns, traveling to the new Ultimate Universe and rescuing his sister Billy from the clutches of a massively overjuiced power vampire, Emmanuel DaCosta, in parentheses here, Ultimate Incursion. Oh, look at that. Look at that kind of, wow, look at that. Eye beams there. Zap. Again, the quality of the relevant stories aside, these events and many more are still a part of Miles' canon. And thus, one has to ask, so which is it? So which is it, Marvel? Is Miles a full-fledged hero who received Peter's blessing to use the Spider-Man name? Or is he still just a young, relatable upstart who has yet to grasp the realities of the superhero game? In question mark there. Yeah, I could see where fans might be getting a little angsty on that thing. You know, if they've established him as a hero, now all of a sudden they're putting him in a story where he's said to be, too young and inexperienced to actually be a hero. It's kind of, again, it's probably one of those things where they wanted to put all the young Spider-Men together, but they could have also put Miles more in the form of being like one of the teachers instead of being a student. But anyways, again, a friendly reminder to everybody, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. That goes for both my Rumble and my YouTube viewers. So, anyways, back to the article here. Again, the quality of the relevant story. Oh, yeah, we read that part already. Sorry about that. Sadly, the answer is likely, in parentheses here, both. As his aforementioned position as one of Marvel's main marketing and merchandising opportunities limits just how far his character can stray from his popular image, while also necessitating that he be given ever cooler story moments to justify his constant hyping up. In other words, they have to put on the Ritz for him all the time, and sometimes that can be a little too much. If you have to, if you have a character that you have to really put everything into all of the time, really putting on the Ritz, as it were, then after a while you're gonna burn out. The character's gonna burn out. You're gonna burn out. After all, heaven forbid a character sees some actual growth or progress over a decade plus of appearances, because that would make things interesting and force the publisher to put some effort into their marketing budget. I believe this argument was also made in another article we read, but not about Miles, about Peter. I remember an article I did, a few months back, I think, where they were saying kind of the same thing about the way they're working Peter into a lot of the stories too, where they keep regurgitating the idea of putting him back in high school or putting him back in his early college days, and just regurgitating that same scenario. unlike what they did with them in Ultimate Spider-Man. So let's see now. As we continue on here, let's see. I'll finish off this article, and as I said here, let's see. Yeah, so. Anyways, ultimately, that Marvel continues forcing Miles into the state of limbo. Is a massive to a character they so profusely insist is one of their big headliners. But who knows? Maybe next year they'll give him another energy sword power up. Okay. So there we go with that one. So that is the only article that I was going to go over tonight. And since I do know a lot of you just came in, let me reiterate something I mentioned at the top of the show. I've had to cancel tomorrow night's show because, as I mentioned to you guys last night, we've been having some connection issues with our internet here at my house. So, and tomorrow there is going to be somebody coming out to hopefully fix it. They'll be here my time between 1 and 5. So if you and I know some of you may not know this, but usually around that time, some of that time is spent, prepping the show. So knowing that likely my internet's going to be down completely for somewhere in that 4-hour period there. That's why I had to cancel tomorrow's show. Hopefully, when I come back on Wednesday, everything will be fixed, and we won't have, and I won't have to worry about granted, it hasn't the issues haven't shown up as much on a show here, aside from, of course, last night. Because usually, it's been kind of funny. It's been more in the mornings that they've been playing havoc, but not to say that the connection issues haven't flared up at other times throughout the day, but they seem to happen more in the mornings than anything else, or overnight morning kind of thing. But with that being said, so just so you guys know, tomorrow I won't be here. No show tomorrow, and I did post that on my post as well for my channel there. We will be back on Wednesday, though, hopefully with all the problems fixed. So now with that being said, and of course this Sunday I'll be joined by Apex from Apex Comics, as we'll be continuing our trip down Comics History Lane, and I believe we'll actually be hitting up Quality this week. So and I'll let you guys know more about that sometime a little later in the week. But with all that being said, and all that out of the way now, now let's go ahead and let's get caught up on all that's gone on over the past weekend here in the world of pro wrestling. As I've of course mentioned, we will actually be I'll actually be giving the results of Monday Night Raw already, because the show was done live earlier today. Since basically right now WWE is doing their Road to WrestleMania tour over in Europe, the European tour leading up to Royal Rumble, Saudi Arabia. So instead of being taped for airing later tonight, it was already aired earlier this afternoon. So now that being said, now let's start by heading back to Friday night SmackDown, as it were, to look at what happened there. And that show was taped, even though it was part of because I think the difference is that the Raw show, of course, being aired on Netflix, so they have to do it more live, while SmackDown is being aired on the USA Network. So kind of funny, the USA Network used to be the home of Raw, and when they were making these changes a couple of years ago, of course, even though Raw's contract was coming up, supposedly they were saying USA was no longer interested in running. I just think they didn't want to run a. I just think they just didn't want to run a. I just don't think they wanted to pay the extra money for the Raw program. That's why they took the lesser one. But with that being said, let's talk about what happened on Friday Night SmackDown last week. As Friday Night SmackDown took place from the OVO Arena, Wembley in London, England, with Corey Graves and Joe Tessitore on commentary. It was announced earlier in the night, of course, that there'd be a four-way match for the number one contendership, to see who would next face Drew McIntyre. They had the qualifying matches for that four-way match on this night. The opening match saw Randy Orton defeat The Miz in just under 5 minutes, hitting him with the RKO. In the second qualifying match, Trick Williams made his in-ring debut on SmackDown, defeating Matt Cardona in just under 9 minutes. Damien Priest, coming off of his victory over Aleister Black in the ambulance match from the week prior, defeated Solo Sikoa in in their qualifying match, qualifying for that four-way match. As of course there was some shenanigans that happened during the match as MFT Solo Sikoa's group of him, of course, JC Mateo, Tala and Tamatonga, and Talaloa have been feuding with the Wyatt Six of late, and the Wyatt Six have been trying to get Bray Wyatt's lantern back from NFTs, so they got involved in the match as well. And then the main event saw Sami Zayn beat Ilya Dragunov so the four men to qualify for the upcoming four-way match for the number one contendership for the WWE title match are Randy Orton, Trick Williams, Damian Priest, and Sami Zayn. A mix of veterans and young guys in there. So now with some of the other matches that happened during that night, saw Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair defeat Julia and Kiana James with, of course, following them in 8 minutes, 27 seconds. Following the match, Nia Jax and Lash Legend came out to attack Bliss and Flair, and Nia Jax had a confrontation with Julia, possibly hinting at a possible face turn for Julia right now. Then in another one of his open challenges, Carmelo Hayes retained the United States title over TNA X Division champion Leon Slater. Now, it wasn't, Leon Slater along with Danny Luna are currently having some visa issues, and as we'll talk a little bit more about later, were both unable to attend the Genesis pay-per-view this last Saturday. And we've kind of been talking about it the last few days as it all happened last week. But there was also some talk that the WWE had also wanted Leon Slater to perform during their England tour, their UK tour, UK branch of the European tour as well. So Leon Slater is another guy that a lot of people are high on. Calling him the youngest in charge. He just recently became the previous record. Jordan Grace, in her in-ring debut on SmackDown, defeated Chelsea Green, the two-time former United States champion. On her way out of the ring, of course, she had a bit of a confrontation with Jade Cargill, the current WWE Women's Champion. It looks like they're building a possible match between the two for the WWE Women's title at some point down the road. So stay tuned for that. So that's all that happened on Friday Night SmackDown. So now let's go ahead and talk about what happened on Saturday's Collision. Let's see. Well, Saturday night you had Collision and you had the some news came down from that. The second on Collision's Maximum Carnage event, coming from the Arizona Financial Theater in Phoenix, Arizona, with Tony Schiavone and Nigel McGuinness on commentary, joined occasionally by Jon Moxley, Don Callis, and Ricochet. The opening match saw Andrade El Idolo with Don Callis in his corner, defeating Angelico in just under 4 minutes. Then in a tag team match, Eddie Kingston and Ortiz defeated the Grizzled Young Veterans in a feud that's been picking up over a while. Then we do get a segment. Now, it was recently announced that all four Radical, and here's one of the big news that came out of this Saturday's So if you did happen to watch this past Saturday's Collision, you probably saw. Now, it was reported last week that all four members of the Radicals, of the not the Radicals, but Rascals, of Zachary Wentz, Desmond Xavier, Myron Reed, and Trey Miguel had all been signed to AEW. However, in the days since that announcement, it was also just announced over the weekend that Trey Miguel was released from his contract. Now, details are still sketchy as to what happened. There's some speculation, but it was done on amicable terms. Trey Miguel has since also stated that he's going to be taking a break from wrestling. So some people have again there's speculation about it, but we'll probably find out more of the details as time goes on. Actually, I do need to go off camera here again for a moment, so I'll be right back. I'm gonna put some music on for you guys. All right, I'm back. Anyways, and of course, a friendly reminder to everybody on both my Rumble and my YouTube channels. If you guys haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking, sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. But with that being said, continuing on with during that promo with the Rascals, of course, Wentz, Xavier, and Reed all basically put all the divisions on notice, the trios, the tag, and the singles divisions on notice that they're coming for them. So then in a women's match, Marina Shafir defeated Lita Steele in about little over 2.5 minutes. Lita Steele, of course, representing Skyflight faction managed by Christopher Daniels, who was in Zeta Steele's corner. It's also been confirmed that Zeta Steele is now All Elite. So she's been signed to All Elite Wrestling, coming off of her stint as part of the WWE's ID program. Prior to that, of course, she spent some time in Major League Wrestling. Then, following that match, that part came later. So we'll talk about that other part I was just about to mention. And then, after, of course, as Jon Moxley had been sitting on commentary for Marina Shafir's match, Don Callis was coming out leading his members, his family, for their upcoming match. So Josh Alexander, El Clone, and Kyle Fletcher were coming out for their match against Skyflight of Scorpio Sky and the team of Top Flight of Dante and Darius Martin. And Don Callis provoked Jon Moxley a bit there and ending up luring Moxley into an ambush by Lance Archer and Rocky Romero, only for the rest of the Death Riders to come out and start a brawl with the Don Callis family, which there's been a 8-man tag match signed for this Wednesday's Dynamite, which we will talk more about. We'll get to that point. But then, of course, Skyflight came out to start their match with, of course, the Don Callis family winning the match. So with Alexander, Elklund, and Fletcher defeating Skyflight in just over 13 minutes. And you had a women's tag team match with Megan Bain and Penelope Ford uh, defeating the team of Danielle Camella and Viva Van in a little over a minute and a half. Finishing off that team with the Doomsday device, the electric chair flying clothesline combination that was originally popularized by the Road Warriors. Marina Shafir came out to celebrate with them, as Marina Shafir and Megan Bain have a alliance going as the Mega Problems, only for them to be confronted by the Timeless Love Bonds, who had been attacked by the Mega Problems previously, and that match is also set up for this Wednesday as well. And then continuing on, then there was a number one contendership match for the national title as Jack Perry defeated Anthony Bowens in 9 minutes 15 seconds, hitting him with a knee shot to the head. And then of course Jungle Jack Perry went after Ricochet, who was on commentary for the match. But Barry now will have a shot at Ricochet in the near future for the national title. And the main event saw the AEW World Trios titles on the line as the Ops trio of Powerhouse Hobbs, Samoa Joe, and Katsuyori Shibata defended against the team of Hangman Adam Page and Jet Speed of Speedball Mike Bailey and the Jet Kevin Knight. Of course, I think most people already knew what the result was going to come in, considering the news past week involving Powerhouse Hobbs. Talk a little bit about that in a moment here. But as such, Hangman Adam Page and Jet Speed. So I would call them the hanging jet speed team. Hanging Jet Speed defeated the team of the Ops in 11-18 to become the new Trios champions. Now, of course, this title change had to happen due to the fact that Hobbs, contract had come up. Now you have to understand too. Collision is usually taped on the same day that they're doing the live show for Dynamite, so it was actually taped this past Wednesday. Now, Hobbs's AEW contract, expired at midnight on Wednesday, so this was definitely his last appearance for AEW. There is some speculation that the WWE has been looking at him to possibly go in. We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, so Powerhouse Hobbs has been officially taken off of the AEW roster page now. They had to keep it up for kayfabe reasons, obviously, but that's all we got for AEW news. So now let's look at what happened at Genesis and even before that. So Saturday night, of course, was Genesis, TNA's Genesis pay-per-view. Before that, though, from the Curtis Culwell Center in Garland, Texas. But before that, on live on YouTube with Matthew Rainwald and Tom Hannafin on commentary, there was the TNA Countdown to Genesis. Had two matches on there as with the opening match of the Countdown to Genesis was a four-way match for the TNA International title as the NXT talent Channing Stacks Lorenzo with Ariana Grace in his corner defended the title against BDE, Eric Young, and a mystery opponent. That mystery opponent turned out to be KJ Orso, the former Fuego del Sol. And I think from what I've seen, but we might be seeing more of them in the coming weeks. So Channing Lorenzo retained the international title over BDE, Eric Young, and KJ Orso. And then the main event to the pre-show there, as it were, the Diamond Collective of Tessa Blanchard and Mila Moore, with Robert Stone and Victoria Crawford in their corner, defeated Indy Hartwell and Vicky Venuto. Now, supposedly, the Elegance brand was sitting ringside. The Elegance brand, who recently regained the Knockouts Tag Team Championships. They were sitting ringside and ended up costing Hartwell and Venuto the win there. So now that was for the countdown show. Now for the Genesis event itself, happening at the pay-per-view, which apparently did not go over well with the fans on Thriller TV with Tom Hannafin and Matthew Rainwell on commentary. The opening match saw AJ Francis get some revenge on Rich Swann after Rich Swann had sent AJ Francis through a table a couple weeks ago on Impact. So AJ Francis getting his revenge on beating him with what his version of the chokeslam he calls a down payment. Then Mustafa Ali defeated Elijah. Then in Johnny Dango Curtis's JDC's retirement match, he lost to Eddie Edwards in 17 minutes, 16 seconds. Johnny Dango Curtis had announced that he was going to retire at Genesis here, having his last match against his best friend, Eddie Edwards. As JDC has, at the age of 42, has had a 27-year career dating back to 1999. Actually was with TNA early on, back I think in 2003, in like the early 2003. WWE is Fandango. He had some time in NWA a few years ago, but now he ended his career to applaud his efforts. And probably what is considered probably one of the least received matches of all time on Cage Match. The next match, of course, was the intergender singles match between Ryan Nemeth and Mara Sade. That went 5 minutes, 21 seconds. Through 49 votes right now, the rating was a 0.62, so under 1. Nemeth got the win on a pretty game Sade. Sade, of course, the former Jakara Jackson in NXT fame. Ryan, this was just a match that was just not received well. It was like Nemeth was trying to act like he didn't want to hit the woman. He kept taunting her, saying, "Yeah, you want me, this, that, and the next thing." And again, the thing that really made this probably just a coup de grace of all of it, Nemeth got the win with a jackknife type pinfall with him holding the ropes on a woman, mind you. Okay. I mean, even with as kind of slim and trim as Ryan Nemeth is, it still looks kind of bad if he has to use the ropes to get a. I'm sorry, but biology people. um, then of course, the next match was the um, Knockouts World Title match. Originally, this was going to be Lei Ying Li versus Danny Luna, but due to visa issues, of course, Danny Luna was unable to attend the event. So what they did was they set up an open challenge on set up an open contract, open challenge for Genesis on this past Thursday Night Impact on AMC, the debut of Thursday Night Impact, in which NXT star Zarya signed the contract. So you had Lei Ying Li defending against Zarya with Zaya Brookside, her Angel Warriors teammate, in her corner, while Sol Ruka was teaming up with Zarya there. Lei Ying Li retained the title over Zarya in 14 minutes 23 seconds in what was considered one of the better received matches of the night. Then you had the Hardys of Jeff and Matt Hardy retaining the World Tag Team titles over the Righteous, Dutch, and Vincent. And it's getting to the point where there's a lot of criticism about the Hardys at this stage in their career. I think very similar to the criticism that a lot of fans had Chris Jericho and AEW. Matt, I think, is like 51. Jeff is 48. There may be a lot of fans out there who, as much as they like the Hardys, as much as the Hardys, a lot of people like the Hardys. I think a factor is that they may be past their prime, and I think a lot of fans are starting to really call them out on it more. So, and then in what was originally supposed to be a three-way for the TNA X Division, we move on to the next match, of course. It was originally supposed to be a three-way for the X Division title. Again, Leon Slater, of course. Well, I don't know if it was as much visa issues or the fact that WWE wanted him for the European tour, or maybe the European tour thing came out of the fact that he was stuck in England anyways. But originally, this was supposed to be a three-way match for the TNA X Division title, in which Leon Slater was supposed to defend against Prime, Cedric Alexander, and Moose. Moose getting his contractual rematch, Cedric Alexander earning the number one contender spot in a gauntlet match a few weeks ago. But now it was turned into a three-way match with Joe Hendry. Joe Hendry coming back to TNA to get the win over Cedric Alexander and Moose after, of course, Cedric Alexander nailed Moose, and Joe Hendry came in and hit the standing ovation. They get the pin on Cedric Alexander. In what was probably considered the best match of the night, albeit I think some people would disagree with the finish, feeling that maybe Joe Hendry didn't really need the win here. But I think, considering the partnership between WWE and TNA right now, I think WWE may have wanted Joe to keep the and then the main event saw a Texas death match for the TNA World Title with Nick Nemeth as a special guest referee. Mike Santana was able to retain over Frankie Kazarian in their third match. Nick Nemeth, of course, attempted to cash in his gauntlet match, but before a referee could get out there, Mike Santana was able to chase him off. So that's all that happened on Genesis Saturday. So now we're going to look to what happened on tonight's, or on today. Well, I guess it would be tonight in Britain, but on this afternoon's Monday Night Raw here. Tonight's Monday Night. Today's Monday Night Raw took place from the SSE Arena in Belfast, Northern Ireland, United Kingdom, with Michael Cole and Corey Graves on commentary on Netflix here. So the show opened up with an women's Intercontinental title match, as Becky Lynch had successfully retained over recent former champ Maxine Dupree. It actually saw Natalya, who had been serving as Maxine Dupree's mentor, as it were, turned on her and turned heel against Maxine Dupree in 11 and a half minutes. In the six-person tag team match, Penta teamed with the Latino World Order members Dragon Lee and Rey Mysterio, defeat the Vision trio of Logan Paul, Bronson Reed, and Austin Theory, with Theory taking the pin here. Then in another match, El Grande America in what was supposed to in his second match, I believe his second match since being called up to the main roster, Siobhan Evans fell to El Grande Americano by referee's decision, as he apparently injured himself during the match, and they had to call the match off at 6:22. The main event saw CM Punk defend the WWE World Heavyweight title against Finn Balor. At 60 minutes 10. And some things of note here: Balor came out to his original face theme, not the Judgment Day theme, which dropping hints that he might be turning face soon. Also, part of the reason Balor was given this opportunity was because, of course, being in Northern Ireland, this is his home. Of course, he has wrestled in the past under the names, of course, of Fergal DeWitt and Prince DeWitt. So that's all we got for the wrestling wrap-up. So now, what we will do, of course, with that, but today we're going to move right into, because I've gone a little longer than I had actually intended to, but there was a lot of wrestling news to get through, and also had to take care of some other business, letting you guys know some other stuff going on there. But with that, today being Monday, January 19th, 2026, let's go ahead and take a look back at this day in each history. History! So let me just see here. 2000, 2021, and 1986. All right, so first off, I'm going to head back 40 years ago, as on this date 40 years ago, back in 1986, Toei Animation's Mapletown premiered on Japanese television on this date back in 1986. Mapletown, also known as Mapletown Stories, is a 1986 Japanese anime series created by Chifude Asakura and directed by Junichi Sato. The series produced by Toei Animation, Asatsu, and Asahi Broadcasting Corporation, consists of 52 half-hour episodes, which aired on ABC. ABC in Japan, not to be confused with ABC here in the States. TV Asahi and other ANN stations in Japan. From January 19, 1986 to January 11, 1987. The show focuses on the adventures of Patty Rabbit, Bobby Bear, and their families in a small city inhabited by anthropomorphic animals named Mapletown. Now, mind you, when I read a little bit about Mapletown, it kind of reminded me of another show had a similar premise that was actually produced up in Canada, Sylvanian Families. It sounds very similar, even though Sylvanian Families, I think, came after Mapletown, but it was basically the same kind of premise. It's kind of a town of anthropomorphic animals. You're following the adventures of, a young group of friends and their families and all that. So, anyways, moving on to the next piece of niche history here, as we'll move ahead to the year 2000, of course, as soon as I clear all that out. As on this date in the year 2000, which happened to be 26 years ago today, the 150th issue of Dark Horse Presents went on sale on this date back in 2000. Sold for $4.50, was 48 pages. Among the features included Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Killing Time, Concrete, Sympathy from a Devil, and Fish Police, Fish City Tonight, along with a couple other no-name stories. So this was an anthology series. So the 150th issue of Dark Horse Presents went on sale on this date back in 2000. And moving ahead to 5 years ago, 2021, on this date in 2021, on this date in the year 2021, Guerrilla Poet Productions' Hello Ninja completed its run on Netflix. So Hello Ninja is an American children's animated television series based on the book of the same name by N.D. Wilson, airing on Netflix. Let's see. The show premiered on November 1st, 2019. Second season was released on April 24th, 2020. Third season was released on September 26th, 2020, and a fourth season was released on January 19th, 2021. So, 5 years ago today, the final season of Hello Ninja premiered and concluded with their release on Netflix. All right, so with that being said, I thank everybody for being here tonight. And one last reminder before we head out, of course, I did mention this a couple times already. No show tomorrow because we're hopefully getting the connection issues fixed tomorrow. So hopefully I will be back Wednesday. And we'll be back up and running at full speed. Of course, we'll get y'all caught up on all the latest and niche news, as well as looking ahead to that night. Looking to tomorrow, the results of tomorrow's NXT, as well as looking ahead to Wednesday night's Dynamite. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here on Wednesday. Bye.